Hey, what's up? This is Jeremy, founder of quickmail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMade.
That's right. So today I suggested the topic of being lonely, not because I'm in Switzerland in my cave alone, in front of camera, but just because I think as a founder, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to social gathering or dynamic even in a company. And as I was discussing that to Amar, my social friend, an animal, is a like, I don't have this problem. So how we should start on this tension? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think you were talking about, we had mentioned before the call is founder loneliness. And so I think that's something that a lot of people have experienced that, like you'd said, before we started the call, Jeremy, that a lot of people, they're alone at the top of the company, right? That, even if you've got one like founder with you, but like, let's say you're a solo founder, you're thinking about all these problems. You're the one who just like are heads and shoulders above in terms of just like caring about how this project actually goes. And it can be like quite lonely, particularly if you're used to being in, maybe a corporate environment or more of a company environment where you have
Yeah.
like peers around, you're probably working on a team already and like and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think that it was kind of weird because my co-founder, I don't think that he really enjoyed actually talking about the business all that much, where it was like all that I really wanted to do. So
Those are
very
probably the
early
best ones. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, possibly. But no, I mean, you hear about people that, yeah, they just never talk about work unless they're like actually working and they're really effective at what they do. But that's definitely like not me. And so early on, I kind of realized that and felt like if I wanted to talk to people about business and to like experience or to like share those experiences, it was going to have to be with someone like outside the company. And so that's when I found you and a bunch of
Yeah.
other people through the foundation, that's something that like I think I've always had friends that were online like that before starting ZenMade, it was poker players like online. And yeah, I don't know, I think that translated nicely for me over the years. Like, I mean, have you had that as well?
I didn't play poker, definitely, but I do think yeah, Mastermind is a really good example of how you can mitigate this, loneliness effect. Now, I think there is two loneliness effect. The first one is like it's hard sometimes as a founder to relate to employee type of problems. That's what I find, like especially in social gathering, you hear like people complaining about their boss or people complaining about their situation. Is like, well, if I don't like the situation, I change it. It's like slightly less empowering type of conversation to some extent. So there's this sort of like loneliness in social gathering, which makes me more attracted to like you mentioned, speaking about foundation people or like DC type of people, like people who actually experience the same problem as you do. And I think our
Mhm.
mastermind is a fantastic way of coping with that when it comes to like loneliness. It's an interesting dynamic about co-founder. I never really had any co-founder. The only relationship I had with regard to co-founder challenges is always people having problems when it comes to shares at the end, because the two founders decided to grow in different directions, but they're still physically locked in the same companies. And so I had like plenty of examples like that, and unfortunately they were like 50-50. So there was like no clause or contract telling how to resolve problems, and then so they stay locked like that. And definitely you should feel even more lonely in those cases. And yeah, I mean, this is something that is very common, and yet not necessarily too much shared across. I don't know why. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, I mean, I think that for me at least, I think that's probably one of the reasons that I wanted to do like the nomad thing and wanted to travel the world, is because I've been able to surround myself physically a lot more with people that think along like the same kind of like lines that we do. Yeah, I mean, honestly, in terms of what you're saying about going to like social, in-person gatherings and stuff like that locally, when I was in San Francisco, whenever I spent time back home, in Palo Alto where I grew up, I definitely feel that a lot, right? And so I think for me, I don't differentiate too much between like quote unquote internet friends and like in real life friends. That I have like a bunch of people that I chat with on Twitter every day, that I interact with those guys more and share more about, my like, software challenges, right? And like helping them out with stuff and everything than I do with a lot of like, my closer, like in-person friends, right? I mean, you think about how long you and I knew each other, like when we were essentially friends over the internet before we actually met. And even
True.
since we've met, we've only actually met like what, 5 or 6 times. And granted, we like, when we go big,
It
right? But I
certainly
mean,
doesn't feel like that.
it doesn't,
but
right? It
but
doesn't.
you may be right. Sadly, like I'm like, holy hell, how many times did we actually see each other?
Yeah,
Like,
because Thailand, Rome, like we did Montreal.
what? Chiang Mai, Koh Phangan, Montreal, Rome, Spain as well,
Yeah, we did
Barcelona.
Spain.
Yeah. Holy
Uh,
shit! Only that.
yeah,
It certainly doesn't feel like it. But you're right.
exactly. So, just something to like keep in mind, right? So that's what I mean when I say like I don't feel lonely. Like the only time I could imagine feeling lonely is if like my wife like cut me off from the internet, right? Which is probably going to happen sometime, but she'd like cut me off from the internet, and then I'd be like,
You lost all
yeah,
your
I can
friends.
spend all day with you. I can spend all day with you, honey, but I need Twitter.
Got it. Before, or actually at the time I was starting QuickMail, I remember I went to entrepreneur meetups, and that was actually terrible. It was lots of people who actually wanted to be, an entrepreneur without actually committed to be an entrepreneurs, and so therefore you had a lot of challenges that were very, very different. And the funny thing is that everyone who figured it out stopped going to those meetings, so just
Yeah.
ended up with only the sort of like
So
wannabe or people who likes, to be active.
what time were those meetings?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It's like at 7 in the evening.
Okay.
Um,
So if you really want to find successful entrepreneurs, you do like a Tuesday at 11 a.m. because anyone that shows up is either a real entrepreneur or they're straight up unemployed, right? And there's no in between, right?
yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. Anyway, I stopped going there anyway. um,
Well, I mean that's one of the things. I think that there's a lot of things in life where, you've got to remember that just traditionally until like, what, 20 years ago, like, so, probably even like more recently than that, all of like your interests, you shared all of your interests with people that were local. And so if you do something or you're going to an in-person entrepreneur event, there's only a certain number of people that are, within like the actual like drivable area or whatever to get to the actual event. And then for them actually to be in the same place, if you're looking for SaaS entrepreneurs that are going through the same challenges that you are, it makes sense to go to like an online community, like, just by, numbers and sample size, you're always going to find like better people there than you are like locally, right? So I feel like you're really looking for a diamond in the rough when you try to go to these like local events rather than just, investing some time like online.
yeah, this is an interesting point. Do you think that as we're growing in our entrepreneur journey, it becomes more and harder to actually find the right people for your path, kind of thing, or do you think it's becoming easier?
I think it's becoming easier. I definitely believe that it's the kind of the whole mantra of like the best way to meet interesting people is to do interesting things. And I'm definitely finding that, we're considerably more successful than like a lot of SaaS entrepreneurs. And, arguably that's just because we've been doing it for longer. But be like as we're seeing like more and more results, I'm beginning to just see people like, care more and more about like what I have to say and everything. And I'm finding I don't have to worry as much about that whole like find a niche. I just share my thoughts online, and some people like them and share them, and some people like don't. But I just stopped worrying about that. But the track records that we have begin to speak for themselves. Begin to like we still have a long way to go, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not like huge on social media, like, but I'm wondering. I think I'm becoming more picky, and I think that shows up as well in our mastermind. Like,
Mhm.
Chad is actually, did an exit, is changing direction when it comes
Yeah.
to business. So it made sense to sort of replace his spot. but I'm
Yeah.
definitely becoming more picky as to who we are getting. Where, you know,
Mhm.
if we would have taken the Jeremy like 5 years ago, it was like pretty much like anyone wants to come, just come. But now it's just
And
like,
yet you still rejected me.
it's true, actually. That's a fun story, and I'd be forever, you know. But hey, you came back, and I
Yeah.
invited you back. Actually, I think did I? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, you did. You spent
Yeah,
like
yeah.
years trying to lobbying me into coming back into the mastermind. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think that was probably not the right spot, but yeah,
Yeah.
a fantastic addition to the mastermind, and I could see that even though you were not at revenue base, you are not where the group
Mhm.
was, but I could see that you're hustling, you're
Mhm.
there, and you know, it was just a matter of time. So that's super cool. But yeah, I feel like I'm way more picky, because now I understand more, like, oh, I've seen this type of people, or I've seen this type of, you know, entrepreneur, or I've seen this whatever, and so therefore I'm like becoming to choose more into, this is the right, you know, entrepreneur I want to, you know, spend time with. um
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
it's because I'm
I
becoming
totally
an
understand where you're coming from.
old person. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Other than the mastermind that we have, that you know that obviously you've been organizing for years now. Other than that one, the best mastermind that I was in was the one that like I personally ran. I was telling you about this one where I did it for 90 days, and I got to pick out the 4 people that were in it that were interested like in joining, and we just had this like awesome crew that like actually went on to do some like pretty cool like things. But it was a nice mix of different skill sets and people with different experiences around specifically launching in a short period, right? And I feel like with you right now, I think that I feel like in the past maybe 6 to 12 months, the focuses of our problems on the mastermind have really become a lot more clear. That I feel like there's a lot more themes to everyone's challenges, whereas before it felt like because we were all still like deep in the operations, it was very much like on a week to week basis we would have very different challenges. Where
Tactical, yes.
right, yeah, now it's like higher level strategic like things, and I think that with that clarity, I think that you've also realized that you know exactly like maybe not exactly what you're looking for yet, but you know like who's not going to maybe
A
be
good
as
fit.
valuable, right? Yeah, like the guys that have come on like thus far, um, they they all seem like it'd be nice to kind of see how they're doing and get their updates every week. But I don't know that they're going to be able to help with the challenges, you know, that the rest of us are kind of going through right now.
Yeah, I definitely felt like, you know, we could help them, but it wasn't clear as to what their contribution would be, to the
Mhm.
group, simply because we experienced most of the challenges that they are going through.
They're going through exactly.
And, you know, we need to find out, sort of like person who already went through some of our challenges and actually solved them.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, we are rotating around the same topic when it comes to loneliness. There are some actionable, you know, things. One of them is effectively just go ahead and then find your tribe online, like find the right people, like who can go on a journey with you, right? It's
Yeah.
so, if you are, for example, just starting up your journey, just go and don't go and ask, you know, I don't know, the founder of Slack to come and, you know, to your mastermind. It's like, because his problems will be like so way off yours, you wouldn't get any value. I
Yeah.
personally think that whoever is like 1 or 2 steps ahead of me is a good, you know, person to try to follow. Anything further than that is like, I won't relate to the problems before, you know, 5 years time or something like
Yeah.
that, and it wouldn't accelerate or help me on that journey.
Yeah.
What do you
That
think?
that's a common like yeah I guess idiom or whatever that I've heard, that you want to have people that are 1 to 2 steps ahead of you and 1 to 2 steps behind you, so that you like are helping some and then getting help like from others, and that helps a lot with kind of internalizing like the lessons and kind of reflecting on like mistakes that you make and all of that, in terms of like helping the people that are like behind you, and then having the people that are just in front of you is going to make like a big difference. Because that's definitely something that I filter for now when I see like, like this company made, you know, all this money, you know, at this time. And it's like, okay, but, you know, if you go back and you look at it, these guys started in like 2006, and like they were one of two companies that did this. So it's more just like a bunch of people signed up because they were one of the very like first ones. And like nothing against them, but that doesn't help me win. And like, you know, like what's becoming more and more of like a red ocean every day, you know? So yeah.
That's a fair point.
Interesting to look at.
Yeah. The second thing I would advise people to do is to also find a group of similar profile, or you know, whether it's industry or the product or whatever you think is relevant to your journey as a founder, and find them also, you know, physically. And I have like two cadence when it comes to mastermind personally. I have the weekly cadence, which is with Amar and with three other awesome people. And and one thing we didn't say as well is because they're Americans and I'm more Europeans, then it really helps as well to mix, you know, the different approach for the same problems. And I gain enormously from this. You know, the American way of doing business is so fast, so great. And I'm more on the sort of like, um, not security, but it's more like less risks, you know, and then more
The
proven things, you know. More risk averse, definitely. So that's one thing. So that's online, that's every week. And because, you know, it's online, I can effectively mingle with different mindsets and different ways, you know, of people approaching the problem, not just, you know, your local. But on the second cadence, I have a monthly mastermind, which I used to do it with two people, but now we're only doing it with one. We still need to find a third one. But basically, this is more, you know, an hour hot seat type of thing. This is not like 5 minutes and so on. So, you know, if you think about it, if we're three, that's 3 hours, which is great for like a dinner, you know, once a month. Although with COVID, it makes it hard at the moment. But you know, you come, hit together, you know, an hour each to discuss about their business. And so you can really drill down into deeper problems. And that also help alleviate the fact that, you know, you can feel very lonely at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think just going outside the company is definitely the way to go there, because I think you alluded to this like earlier, is if you're trying to befriend like your employees because you're lonely running the company, that's not going to be ideal for the company, right? That like I'm friends with a lot of my employees genuinely, but I think that it allows me to do that like a lot more comfortably, because like I don't need to be, right? And like that takes away a lot of the pressure there. Like nothing wrong with being like friends with your employees. You have to realize that, you know, if you're the one that really cares about this, talking to other entrepreneurs that have no skin in the game, right, which can actually be a good thing, right? Because you get biased, you know, input if you talk to your employees. If you talk to another entrepreneur where like, you know, they just want to help you, you know, their advice is actually going to be pretty solid in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and that's probably why a lot of people got advisory boards, you know, because they can get people who've been there, done that already, to help you out without necessarily, you know, suffering the consequences in a sense. Yeah, this is a great point. I do know people who actually sort of went into the entrepreneur path and replicated the structure that they had as an employee in past company in order to help, you know, alleviate the burden and the difficulty of making, you know, tough decisions. As a founder, you have to make tough decisions, and there's no one really, you know, telling you if you've done the right decision or not, if this is the decision you should be doing. And of course, that could, for some people who have more difficulties to take decision, accentuate this sort of like loneliness problems, like, you know, really no one's really helping here, you know, for taking decisions. And I would say you have to sort of be comfortable with that at some point, because if you're not, then I think that's a critical component of being a founder, being able to make tough decisions and live with it. And too many people are just looking for external approvals, whether it's from their peers, whether it's from their, and when it comes from their employees, I think that's the worst, for taking the right decision for the business, as you mentioned. So yes, all of this could effectively accentuate, you know, the feeling of loneliness.
Yeah,
I guess that's probably also why a lot of people are building in public, to some extent. and you could see some of the people building in public, questioning their Twitter feed for, is that the right decision doing X, Y, Z? And you're like, kind of like, man, I hope you're taking this with a grain of salt, because no one really, have as much visibility on your business as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely a big. I think that there's a difference there between you and me with how we look at least some things like within the business, because I really like getting other people's opinions, right? And I think that you sometimes like actually don't, that you're just like, no, like I know what I'm gonna do and I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. And I think that um yeah, I think that I'm sometimes like more, I think that I'm sometimes more open to feedback or like outside ideas, like to a fault, right? Where it's like it's too much, right? It's too many different things like coming in. But like, I always like to know how other people would like see the situation. And then, it's like I trust myself, like you said, to know my business the best and to figure out what the best approach is, right? Whereas I feel like you're actually very like decisive when you choose an action that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's another sort of like difference between
Mhm.
you and me, because I don't think you're like, taking everyone's opinion. And very often, especially when it comes to marketing, is like, look, I know what I'm doing and I do it.
Mhm.
And I think it's great to know your strength. And I
Mhm.
think one of the good thing that works, especially in a relationship, is that we at least I value very much your opinion.
No,
I
no,
have
you're right, Jeremy. I value my opinion too.
so I have a deep respect for, your opinion, where you're coming from, how you're thinking, and so on. And I agree. At the end of the day, for I am the one to pay the risk or the results of taking the decision. So I do take inputs, but at the end of the day, I make the decision.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think a lot of people are too chicken out by taking the decision, and then they will take someone else's decision. They will go wrong. And in fact, it was his fault, or, it was someone else's problem. It's like when I take full ownership of the problem of my company, like, 100%, even sometimes 110%. Um, and I think that it's not necessarily, it's like the other thing is sometimes I know someone is right, but I know I also need to experience it in order to feel the results of being wrong. A good example is probably like, accepting external fundings. Like, I know this is right. Like, if I knew what to do with the money, I could grow the company much faster, but I need to experience the pain first of what is it not to do it. So I make sure that when I create the second company, I will know what is the alternative better. And I think it helps solidifying the understanding and the knowledge and the learnings, but it is obviously like probably not always the best path to take. Um,
Yeah.
and you're right. Sometimes, I made my mind. It's like, I'm going to try that. I hear you guys, and I think, you may be right, definitely, but I have the most
Yeah.
visibility on my own business. I know the internal dynamics, and so therefore I'm still going to try that. But I'll keep in mind that this was the other path, and I decided to take this one. I think the worst
Yeah.
is, just letting it drive and not taking a decision anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I think that's something that's yeah, that's a big mindset shift that I feel like every successful founder has to go through, right? Is like taking that sort of ultimate accountability or ultimate responsibility, right? Is other people can give me input on this decision, but like when I make the decision, like I'm making the decision, not, like I'm doing this because someone else told me to. And if it goes wrong, then it's like their
Yeah, it's not
fault.
me, right?
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
like,
So
yeah.
yeah, I was going to say to loop this back into like what we'd initially started the conversation on with founder loneliness. It helps to take the same approach there, right? Is if you're like lonely as a founder, jump on Twitter, right? Drop like me a DM, drop Jeremy a DM like on Twitter, and start building in public. Start like kind of sharing, or engaging with like with other people and stuff. That there's lots of folks out there for you to like to connect with, and so the journey can be lonely, but the internet makes it a lot easier for it to be a lot like less lonely, So, you don't really have an excuse, like it's commit to doing that.
Yeah, I would also do a counterpoint to this one. I would say don't try to avoid it, like grow into it. And what I mean by that is you can experience loneliness at the top, even though you may not own the company. Like I remember a long time ago, I was sort of like promoted to a more team leader position. And then I started experiencing it. The dynamic on the team shifted. I was the leader, now I wasn't. And, I didn't like it at all because I'm like someone who is very collaborative, who actually love to work with people and then get stuff done and so on. And it was a very difficult transition phase, but I can see the benefit of being comfortable with that side of things. It's definitely a different dynamic. And if you grow comfortable into that and you exercise this muscle, I think it will make you so much better, because then you wouldn't seek approval of someone, whether it's from Twitter, whether it's from your employee, whether it's from your friends, whether it's and there's something like, I mean, Elon Musk is a hot topic at the moment, but I would just say that, he said something funny at some point, well, like very often anyway. And it's not someone I follow anyway, but he said something about of course, like I invented electric cars, I'm going to the moon and so on. Do you think I was a normal guy? And I think it's like so much to the point. If you seek everyone's sort of like approval and so on, just in order to not feel lonely in your decision making, then at the end you'll just do average product that everyone could do, and you will never actually just push the envelope. And long rant, but yeah. So be comfortable. Just grow this muscle, and every time you feel like it's like it's fine. That actually helps me grow in my role. But at the same time, you could try to compensate that with some other things, like, getting that mastermind every once in a month, because once a month is actually pretty good, because that's not often enough. So you can't actually take decision on your own, but that's often enough so that you don't do like massive mistakes that, will be really hard to come back from. I think the cadence of monthly is a good cadence when it comes to business decisions.
I definitely like having multiple masterminds, and different timings are also nice, that it gives you, like, I really like ours being weekly, but I'm open to other timings. But I feel like if we were to stop meeting every week, I would try to find another weekly mastermind to have that ongoing accountability. But I like the idea of the monthly ones, like what you're saying, that you can take a step back and do higher level strategy, right? You can catch big mistakes before they happen and stuff, but you have time to actually take action on stuff. So yeah, it's really good.
Love it. Well, that's it for me. I don't have much else to say for this episode.
Yeah, nothing more from me here either. I think we're good on that. Hopefully a couple people, agree with us, disagree with us, agree with one of us.
If you feel lonely, just DM Amar. It's just Amar.
Yeah, with a gift. Has to be a gift.
There you go. So it's just Amar, all in one word. It's just Amar, all in one word.
All right, cool.
And
see you next time.
Yeah, and for me it's Jay Chatelain. So there you go. All right, see you next time.